Hey guys, Kevin gives me another classic movie for you guys, and this movie we're reviewing, this was a movie that I have wanted to see for so long. I've heard so many people talk about this movie, and I purposely saved this for the last movie I reviewed from Paul Thomas Anderson for classic movies and everything, and that is the 2007 epic There Will Be Blood. And oh my god, guys, this movie, I could not wait to watch it. I've heard so many things about this movie. Not just that it's an amazing movie, but I've heard some people say it's one of the greatest movies ever made in American cinema. I've heard some people say that it's, one of the finest movies of the 2000s of the decade, things like that. And I was very hyped up for it, definitely. I've heard it has one of the best male performances of all time. And I have to say, after watching There Will Be Blood, There Will Be Blood is an absolute cinematic masterpiece. It is one of the best films ever made. It is Paul Thomas Anderson's best film, and I am so happy I left it for last, because I did not think I would love this movie nearly as much as I did. I honestly didn't, guys. I thought this movie was going to let me down. And there are many reasons why, honestly. I thought it was going to let me down, and it didn't let me down one bit. It exceeded my expectations, if anything. Basically, let's get to the plot of this movie, which I love the plot of this movie. We get this character of Daniel Plainview, who basically one day, um, basically he discovers oil near Los Angeles, California, and he starts establishing this small drilling company. And after a worker dies in an accident, he basically adopts the man's orphan son, HW, and basically uses HW as basically, a family man, and kind of makes people work for him based on his family, and makes it seem like something's going on, and basically just uses him. And eventually he attempts to buy the farm. Basically, he's approached by this guy, Paul Sunday, who tells him of an oil disrupt under his family's property, but Paul's brother twin Eli holds out for $5,000, and basically Eli, Daniel makes this oil thing and everything, oil, what's it called? He makes a drilling company, and basically he does anything he can to make this drilling company work. However, eventually this starts to take a real toll on him after an accident happens. This starts to take a real toll on him, and he starts to realize that what he thought he wanted might not be what he wanted, and it might just be too late after everyone starts to turn against him. And that's basically the plot of There Will Be Blood. I think that is an awesome plot, and there's so much more to this movie than just being an oil, him working at this oil company and this drill company. There's so much more to it, and there's so many things I love this movie. First of all, by far the best thing about this movie is Daniel Day-Lewis's performances as Daniel Plainview. I know I say this a lot, guys, but Daniel Day-Lewis, I mean, I know I say a lot that people give amazing performances, but Daniel Day-Lewis is an actor who hasn't made a lot of movies in a while. He used to make a lot of movies, but he really hasn't made a lot in a while, and Daniel Plainview, I think, is by far Daniel Day-Lewis's best performance. It might be one of the greatest. It is by far one of the greatest male performances of all time. He just kills it in this role as Daniel Plainview. I don't know how he did it, but you had to have thought Daniel Plainview was a real character. No, it's just Daniel Day-Lewis is so good at playing the character Daniel Plainview, who, in my opinion, is the perfect example of an anti-hero. That's exactly what Daniel Plainview is. He is a man that gets what he wants, makes sure it happens, and does whatever he can. He's using his son just to get workers' sympathy and get them to come work for him and get this to work out. He's, basically not giving a shit about any of the workers, and making all these promises to him that aren't true. I mean, he's really setting himself up for these really bad things, and plus he's ruthless. He wants nothing but money, and he does whatever he can to get what he wants, no matter what it takes, and that basically is his character. And yeah, he does do all these terrible things, but at the same time, we care so much for him as a character. You want him to succeed, you feel his emotion, and you feel how bad things are going for him. And why do I think this is? Because of just how well Daniel Day-Lewis portrays this role. I mean, you don't just see him as this guy that's, narcissistic and doesn't really give a shit about other people and just wants to make money. You don't really see that. You see him as a man who's trying to achieve a goal, and it's just failing horribly at it, and it's going well for him, and then it's not. It's just such a compelling story, and I think Daniel Day-Lewis perfectly portrayed that role. He totally deserved the Oscar win that he got for this movie. Just one of the best performances ever. He was fantastic in this movie. Paul Dano had a really complicated role, definitely. Paul Dano, very complicated role as Paul Sunday and Eli Sunday. Because the thing about this role is that he had to play two characters, Paul Sunday and Eli Sunday, the twins. Now, Eli definitely has a lot more to do in the movie than Paul does, but what I like about Eli's character is he's kind of the first person that starts to suspect that Daniel might not be telling them the truth, and there's definitely something off about Daniel, that he's lying to them, that he's not telling the truth, and their little struggle, this whole fight really is one of the most essential things about the movie, and the bonding that Eli and Daniel have is very interesting. But then eventually, after something happens, Eli realizes that he just can't trust Daniel anymore, and that when there's this great scene where Eli has this revelation that he just can't trust him, and it's this incredible scene, I loved it, and I loved what happens in that scene. He really gave an incredible performance, and Paul Dano really killed in this movie, I have to say. Kevin J. O'Connor as Henry is one of the most mysterious roles in the movie because he comes in like the second half of the movie. There are three halves of the movie, in my opinion. The first half is when he's making the oil company and establishing it, and when the second half is after that oil company fails and he's trying to basically make a living and try to still make money and things like that. And the third half is the aftermath, and Henry comes in the second half. He claims to be Daniel's brother, and he's a very you don't know what's going on with his character, but after you find out what happened to his character, I mean, something incredible happens, and I thought his character was just incredible. Really, he was. And the only other character I'm really going to talk about, because you just have to, is Dylan Frazier as H.W. Plainview, who by far is one of the most important characters in the movie, because H.W. Plainview, basically Daniel is just using him the whole time, and H.W. doesn't even realize that he's not actually Daniel's son, and he uses him and things like that. But just beyond that, the thing I love about H.W.'s character is eventually he does become deaf, and you can see that Daniel doesn't know how to raise him. He doesn't raise him like a son, he doesn't treat him like a son, but then when H.W. goes deaf, he's basically forced to be a father to him, and it's really interesting to see him in this role. Their relationship is by far one of the most complex, interesting things about the movie, and Dylan Frazier really pulls it off perfectly. I loved his performance too, and that's really everyone I'm going to say. There are other characters in the movie that I could talk about, but I think those four performances are just fantastic. They all killed it, and everyone killed it in this movie. Everyone was absolutely fantastic, I have to say. Now, the directing by Paul Thomas Anderson, there's a reason why this is his best film. It's his most distinctly different film from his other movies, but also that it's very much like his other movies. The thing I love about Paul Thomas Anderson is all of his movies deal with real human issues that I think people can relate to, and I think that's something really great that Paul Thomas Anderson does. You would think that this was based on a true story. I thought it was, but it's not, and the way Paul Thomas Anderson just tells a story, the tone that he sets for this movie is perfect, and he really just... You watch the first scene in this movie, like the first 12 minutes, which is one of the greatest openings ever. I personally think it is. I mean, there's no dialogue. It's just seeing Daniel be a prospector and find this oil, and then he gets, HM. It perfectly sets the tone. HW perfectly sets the tone for the movie. It's an incredible scene, and just you watch that scene, you see the tone that Paul Thomas Anderson directs for this movie, and it's just perfect. He directed it perfectly. I don't think anyone else really could have pulled it off, and Paul Thomas Anderson really did kill it. The screenplay, though, by far, oh my god, such a great screenplay. So many great lines, so many great things about it. The thing I love about the screenplay right off the bat is the fact that Paul Thomas Anderson, again, this isn't based on a true story, and it really does feel that way. The thing I love that Paul Thomas Anderson does is how deep he gets into these characters. He really makes you feel like, they were real people, and he directs them like they're real, and that's something I think is really great. There's a point in the movie that I personally really do love when things just don't start to go really downhill for Daniel, and there's this incredible moment in the movie when Daniel realizes that this isn't what he wanted, and I'll get into that when we get into spoilers, because I'm definitely talking about spoilers for this movie. This is a movie you have to. That's why it says There Will Be Blood movie review with major spoilers, because when I say these are major spoilers, these are major spoilers. If you find out what happens in these scenes, you're not going to be happy. I'll get into the spoilers a little bit later, though. But the screenplay is just so great. Every line is great. The dialogue is fantastic. Also, the jumps in time is something that's very hard to pull off. And I talk about this in my Fantastic Four review. This movie knows how to do it. Things change when you jump in time, and this movie, it feels essential to jump in time because that part of the story is just over. It just kind of feels like that part of it kind of feels like like a chapter book. It's like that chapter's over, move on to this chapter. And that's something I thought was really interesting the way they did that, and I definitely really love the way Paul Thomas Anderson handled the screenplay. Definitely really great stuff. The characters were fantastic, and there's so many great messages in this movie. The movie, for me, the message it's really trying to get across is, even though you're powerful, even though you have money, it can't buy you happiness, okay? It can't buy you happiness. There's so much more to it. And also, all those bad choices you make, everything bad that happens to you, it will eventually come to bite you in the ass. And that is exactly what happens to Daniel in this movie. And I thought the screenplay was extremely well executed. I love the screenplay. It was just so many great lines, and it was just one of the best screenplays I think ever, honestly. One of the best screenplays ever. I was into the movie the whole time, and I loved it, really. It was a great screenplay. And they did a great job also with not making the screenplay boring, and I thought that was great as well. And the movie never, ever slows down. Like, there's dialogue, but for me, it's always just moving, moving, moving. It's always interesting. I was always into it, and I always loved it. The cinematography is some of the most beautiful, gorgeous, uh, realistic, beautiful cinematography ever. I mean, just the cinematography is so realistic. It looks so real. The scenes of them working in the mine are just incredible to watch. It feels like you can see how much this is, how bad this is for them, how bad of conditions this are, how bad the conditions are, how much of a struggle this is for them, and that's something I thought was really great with the cinematography, the way the cinematography was able to tell the story in a way. The cinematography definitely told you where you were. I thought that was definitely very well done, and it was so beautiful. The cinematography, every shot just looks fantastic. You can honestly just take every shot of this movie, and it all just be beautiful, honestly. Take one scene from this movie, every scene is just beautiful to look at. The cinematography is perfect. I have no problems with it at all, and it was just perfect cinematography, honestly. Perfect cinematography, and I loved it. I thought the cinematography was just perfect to this movie, definitely. That's something I thought was just fantastic. I love that, definitely. Um, and cinematography was just great. Also, the emotional impact of this movie, I think, is just fantastic. That's something I think is great. The emotional impact, it's very remarkable. It's very much a movie about secrets and how you shouldn't keep them, and karma's a bitch and things like that. I talked about that, but I think that is also fantastic, and I definitely love that. But the score to this movie is one of the most haunting, beautiful, eerie scores I've ever heard. I mean, that eerie sound that you hear anytime something bad's happening, when something bad's gonna happen, that score comes on, it just sets the tone perfectly for that scene. I love the score to this movie. It comes at some of the most intense moments of the movie, and it always came on the perfect time. I was like, okay, yes, that's when the score needs to come on, and it just put you right into the movie. Like, even if you lost focus, that score, when it comes on, puts you right into the movie, and by far one of the best things was the score. The ending as well was perfect. I'll talk about the ending, but it really was perfect, and I really want to talk about spoilers, guys. I'm going to talk about spoilers now. Also, the editing was great. The movie flew by for me. This movie is longer than Boogie Nights. Not as long as Magnolia, but I was into it the whole time. There was not one scene that I wasn't into. I was never bored, and I was surprised by how glued to the screen I was. Like, it was very hard for me to lose focus in this movie, and that was something that was awesome, definitely. So now I'm going to get into spoilers because I really, really want to talk about spoilers for this movie. You guys have not seen No Baby Blood. These are major, major spoilers. Go watch it on Netflix. That's how I watched it. I can't wait to buy the Blu-ray, definitely. I know I'm going to get it. It's like $9 on Amazon. You guys can get it if you want to, but I recommend to watch it on Netflix. That's how I watched it, and it is fantastic. Go check it out. It's a great movie. Okay. So I think the first thing I really do want to talk about is, of course, the whole mining accident. As I said, the whole thing with HW. Then, of course, there's a whole thing with the character of Henry, who I knew right away there was something about him. I mean, just something wasn't connecting. Now I didn't know if this guy was gonna, like, end up killing Daniel or if something really bad was happening, because I thought maybe he would just kill him, but then I thought, no, that's not really realistic. And then, of course, the scene when we realize that he's actually not Henry, and the scene where he just asked him, some that memory of childhood. I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it was something like what happened at that play. It was like around like the farm or something. And Henry confesses that he was actually a friend of the real Henry who died of tuberculosis, and he doesn't get a chance to explain because Daniel just kills him right then and there. That is the first instance of Daniel just flipping out. I mean, you see the rage he has, and that's something I love about his character, that he just feels like a character that's being pushed to his boiling point, and you really do see that in this scene. This was like the first scene where I'm like, he's really being pushed to his. The whole movie, I was pretty much thinking, the whole movie, I'm like, Daniel is really being pushed to his boiling point, and I feel like he's about to just explode. It always seemed that he was about to explode, and you really saw that in scenes like this, definitely. However, I think the movie really got great when we go to 1927, and HW's married Mary Sunday, that girl he really liked, and basically he's come back, and Daniel's now extremely wealthy, but he's not happy at all. He's not at all happy. You think that because he got the money he won, he has the power, you think he'd be happy, but he's not happy at all. He's drinking, and it's pretty much because everyone's turned his back on him. He doesn't have HW anymore. He doesn't have Eli. He has no one. And there's that fantastic scene with HW where HW, asks him if he wants to establish his own oil company, and Daniel's just done. He's pissed off at HW, and he tells him, he reveals his, true origins as an orphan, and he's just a very bitter man now that anything anyone says to him, he's just gonna flip out on them on. And I love the scene where HW tells him, I thank God I have none of you and me, and when, Daniel's saying, you're a bastard in a basket in the middle of the desert, there's that classic line, which I think is a very iconic line, by the way. Definitely, I think that line is very iconic, and will go down as one of the best lines in movie history. But the thing I love about that line is that HW is not at all offended by this. He doesn't even care. He just leaves. He's like, you know what, whatever. Fuck you. I'm glad I don't have any, I'm glad I'm not related to you. Because why would you want to be related to that? Honestly, why would you? And I think HW kind of always suspected it. I mean, at first HW is kind of like, oh no, there's no way. But I think there were times where you just had to suspect it. He didn't treat you like a father. He wasn't a father to you, definitely, and that's something I loved about that scene. I just thought that was really the perfect scene. However, the scene between Eli and Daniel is just the perfect way for this movie to end, because, Eli's trying to tell him he made a living as a radio preacher, and he's done, the thing you see again is that Henry, HW and Eli, they've both done very successful, and Daniel just doesn't want to hear about their success. He doesn't care about it, because he's not successful. He's just lost everything. He has the money, but he's just not happy. He has no one, and he's very upset to know that he had nothing to do with their success, and you really see that here. And the scene where he's telling Eli to just say that there's no such thing as God and that he's ridiculous for doing that. I mean, it's such an intense scene. You can tell that Daniel's about to do something. That whole scene, I'm like, oh shit, something is going to happen. Either Eli's going to kill Daniel or Daniel's going to kill Eli. I didn't know what was going to happen here. And when Daniel just, ends up, basically pushing Eli against that bowling thing, I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen. But then when Daniel taunts him and mentioning Paul, and, Daniel claims he has his own oil company and is, more successful, you really do see that Daniel is just willing to get Eli to admit he's drove him to this success and things like that. And he's chasing Eli down, and then he just kills him with the bowling pin, and it really just feels like that's his last inch of just emotional stuff that he needs. And when Daniel says, I'm finished, that to me seemed like that was the end of Daniel's boiling point. He's done with his boiling point. That was basically his breaking point. There's nothing more he can do, and he's basically realized that. I think he's saying he's finished. He's given up. He's given up. He's going to live the life he has. He's understand that there's nothing he can do about it, and he's stuck. He's stuck here. He's made a living, but he has no one. He has no one, and now he just realized that. And I think that scene, the thing I liked about that scene is that when he kills Eli, he's not necessarily happy, and he's not satisfied either. In fact, you see, he kind of, to me, it kind of looked like he took a second and was like, what the fuck did I just do? Like, if you remember, he bashes his head with a bowling pin, and then he kind of looks around like, what did I just do? He kind of comes to that realization, and to me, that kind of made me feel like Eli just realized that he's lost everyone. I mean, HW now wants nothing to do with him, obviously, because now he knows that he's not his father and he doesn't want him in his life. And they just killed Eli. So his two closest people, he now has no one. And I think in that moment, he just realized that. And I think that was a perfect ending. I love that. It was a very depressing ending, but it was the perfect ending to a character like this. Again, Daniel's an anti-hero, and anti-heroes don't have happy endings. And I think the perfect example was what happened with Daniel. He just lost everyone. I was surprised that Daniel didn't, like, kill himself at the end. I thought that was going to happen, but I'm happy that doesn't happen because, honestly, it's now, he needs to decide what he wants to do, and basically now he's stuck in this life, and there's nothing he can do about it, even though he wants to get out of it, and he's just stuck there. I thought that was a perfect ending, and I love that, and I just thought that was amazing. So overall, guys, There Will Be Blood is a true cinematic masterpiece. It is definitely a classic. It'll go down as one of the best movies, I think, in cinema, ever. It's one of my favorite movies of all time by far. 5 out of 5 or A+, definitely. I absolutely love this movie. I can't wait to rewatch it on Blu-ray. And let me tell you something, guys. This is a movie that I really feel is something for everyone. It's a movie that everyone needs to watch because it has family drama. It has psychological drama. It has mining in there. It has some, action for people who want that. It has intense scenes. It has secrets. It pretty much just has everything that makes a great movie. And all that stuff just comes to a halt into a great movie, and it's all wrapped together, and it's fantastic, and, the ending of the movie, I think, is just fantastic, too. Please check out There Will Be Blood if you haven't seen if you haven't seen There Will Be Blood, why are you still watching this review? Seriously, you've ruined the movie for yourself, whatever. But if I had to rank, movies from 2007, this would by far be my number one, definitely. I mean, I'm so happy I watched this. I can't wait to buy it on Blu-ray and watch it again at some point. I know I will, and I just can't wait to watch it again. But that's basically my review. There Will Be Blood. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys saw this movie. You have seen it. I absolutely love this movie. I'm so happy I watched it. I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for another classic movie review, and I will see you guys for that. Oh, by the way, guys, I want to tell you guys something. So, you know how I've reviewed like 1 or 2 classic movies a day? Starting tomorrow, we are getting down to the final 6 classic movies. Yes, this Friday, classic movies will be ending. So, what I'm doing from now on, 1 classic movie a day, and that's it. So, you're going to get 1 classic movie Sunday, 1 Monday, 1 Tuesday, 1 Wednesday, 1 Thursday, 1 Friday, and then classic movies will end. So, look forward to that for the final 6 classic movies starting tomorrow. And yeah, so I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.